What's up, guys? Dr. Mo here, digital nomad physician at digitalnomadphysician.com. This is Kassel, Germany. That's my beautiful little bread right there. I just made some bread. Look at this kitchen, it's gorgeous. The old building, really beautiful, great lighting. Lighting's great. Yeah, very comfortable. So, wanted to talk a little bit about healthcare consulting specifically in writing clinical guidelines. I hate clinical guidelines. I'll tell you why I hate clinical guidelines, because I think they actually take away from the way a physician would think independently. But what they do is they force large medical businesses, large medical practices, and all physicians to practice in a very similar way. This makes it easy to regulate someone, but it doesn't make for good clinical care. All that said, there's still a very big need for clinical guidelines. So if you think of any new telemedicine company, any new healthcare company, they're going to need to have things written in their P&P, their policies and procedures, their guidelines, their internal documents, their external documents, the documents that they share with third parties. Those are the BAAs that you commonly hear about that we sign. And so if you're interested in healthcare consulting, this is a good video for you to watch. If healthcare consulting is not your thing, this is probably going to be boring, but it might be interesting to you if you want to know what physicians do in healthcare consulting, what I do in healthcare consulting. For example, a current client that I have is a medical device company, and they have medical devices that can help patients. They are partnered up with an actual telemedicine company, and they need both of these two entities need to know how to best create a guideline, a clinical document that goes over all the risks and benefits of providing this medical device, what the physicians should do, what the physicians shouldn't do, and all the things that you can imagine. So to break it down for you, imagine you're the medical director of the telemedicine company, right? And you're about to tell your physicians, hey, these new sets of patients are going to come in from this new funnel. This funnel comes from a medical device company. So the medical device company advertises their product to patients. The patients go on their website and they're like, oh, I really want this medical device. I want this penile stretching device, or I want this, breast pump that has this Wi-Fi device, or this, what is this thing called that people are using now? The CGM, etc. So they get on the medical device company, and now the medical device company sends those patients, that's the funnel, they send those patients to the telemedicine company, right? The medical device sends it to the telemedicine company. The telemedicine physicians are going to see these patients and they're going to evaluate them for the need of this medical device. Now, should it be like that? That's a whole different discussion. I'm not even going to talk about that. The reason I'm doing all this is because our healthcare system is so complicated and in some ways kind of inappropriate the way we advertise to patients. But at the same time, I want to do the right thing, and I have the knowledge, and I can create a clinical document that's going to help protect the patient, make me some money, and help protect the company. So what I mean by that is, when that physician, who's usually going to be a primary care physician, family medicine, internal medicine, maybe some gynecologist, maybe some pediatrician, when they interact with that patient who came and that patient is now asking for that medical device, that physician needs to be armed with some knowledge. So the telemedicine company is going to say, hey, all of you new physicians or all of the old physicians, we have a new clinical guideline document that we'd like you to review when it comes to this product. Let's say it's Ozempic. Let's say it's some other weight loss medicine. Let's say it's like the continuous glucose monitor, or some wearable EEG or wearable electronic for EKG. I'm being vague intentionally because I don't want to tell you what product I'm consulting for. But doesn't matter, right? I could do it for any of these companies, and I do not have to be a cardiologist. I do not have to be a pulmonary doctor. I do not have to be a dermatologist. I do not have to be a surgeon in order to write a good clinical guideline. In fact, it might make sense for me to write the clinical guideline because I'm a family medicine doctor, right? And the majority of these physicians are primary care doctors. But it could also make a lot of sense if I'm a dermatologist and I can write that clinical guideline from a very unique perspective. And if you're going to write clinical guidelines, it's really important to be able to communicate. That's probably the number one skill that I think a physician who wants to be a healthcare consultant should have. You can have a ton of knowledge, but the smartest physician out there is going to be of no use to a company that wants to push their product, connect with patients, avoid risk, etc. It won't help. So your knowledge by itself is probably not as important. What matters is that you can communicate with the stakeholders. So for example, I'm going to have to talk to the medical device company. I'm going to have to maybe talk to some patients, right? I'm going to have to talk to CEOs and presidents and product developers and computer programmers and back-end managers, right? Once I create the protocol, I may have to talk to some of these people. You don't have to necessarily, but I definitely will have to talk to the medical device company. I definitely will have to talk to the medical director of the telemedicine company. And I am the one who can take the information from one to the other. I can say, look, a continuous glucose monitoring, yes, it is only indicated for type 1 diabetics. But for patients who want it, who have these kind of criteria, there are some guidelines written. This is the research that I did. This is what I found. And they could benefit from this. However, if we're going to do it and we're going to do it safely, these are the steps we should follow. And then I try to think through all the ways something could go wrong. A patient, imagine a patient has the CGM installed incorrectly and they see a low reading and then they go eat a bunch of sugar and now they go into a blood sugar of like 500, 800, so those are the things that maybe we want to think through. Or for somebody who is on the border, type 1, type 2 diabetes, is that appropriate? Which patients should be excluded? Which patients should be included? And so it's basically a clinical guideline document where we're guiding the physician through the diagnostic algorithm, through the prescription algorithm, through the rule out, rule in algorithm, and next steps to follow. And we want to, of course, bracket that really nicely with current guidelines and some research documents as far as why this clinical guideline is accurate and appropriate. And when you first want to get into this space, you got to find clients, right? And everybody thinks that, well, there's a job out there where they're looking for a physician to create the guideline. No, it doesn't work that way. What usually happens is the physicians who are already seeing patients are often burdened with having to write these clinical guidelines. They don't want to write the clinical guidelines, and it becomes a very inefficient use of time, and it often burns out those physicians, etc. So if you can come in and you can say that I'm a professional clinical guideline writer, right? In fact, I might just go do that and put that on either Upwork or Fiverr. We'll see. I might do that, and that will be great. That will be an extra additional income for me. But you can basically put that on one of your profiles and say, I write clinical guidelines. So whatever thing that you want to do and you want to make it appropriate and you want to have an internal document that you can reference, something that you can show to regulators, something that you can show to physicians if they step out of line or do something inappropriate. That's what I do. I write those guidelines. And you yourself as a physician can reach out to these telemedicine companies, right? You don't have to wait for them to come to you. In fact, they probably won't come to you because they think like, well, there's probably nobody out there who can do this. Or, well, we already have physicians who can do this. And instead, you can say that, well, I'm in this space, so I'm very familiar with clinical guidelines. I've worked for multiple telemedicine companies, or multiple medical groups, and I know what all these clinical guidelines look like. In fact, if you can keep some clinical documents that you've written, you can use that as your portfolio, right? And communicate. So once you reach out to them and they're like, yeah, we're kind of interested, the next thing is to sell yourself and say, well, this is, give me the information. This is what you want to create. Great. Who are the other stakeholders? Great. Do you want me to be in touch with them as well? Yes, no. And here's a brief outline that I will create for you, and you can take a look at it and see if this is along the lines of something you're looking for. If so, I can then go from this from this outline, create something much more thorough, much more robust, and then we can go through the different reiterations of it or make some changes, etc. And this entire time, you may have to talk to some specialists, right? And you're going to charge your hourly consulting rate to this company. So if you're charging $200, if you're charging $175, if you're charging $100 an hour, well, if I'm going to go talk to a dermatologist about this particular product or an endocrinologist, I'm going to not only ask the medical device company or the telemedicine company who's hired me to write this guideline. I want to say, hey, I spent $200 hourly for that physician for their, $400 for their time. So I spent 30 minutes with them asking them questions, and these are my hourly rates. You got to learn how to do an invoice. It's very easy. You can use PayPal to do invoices. You can create it on a spreadsheet. You then have to go back to the stakeholders. Who's paying you the money? If it's a telemedicine company, you got to check in with them regularly, right? You want to learn ways of communicating with them. Do you want to use Google Meet, Google Chat? Do you want to use Slack? Do you want to use WhatsApp? Whatever method, email, just going back and forth in an email string. Whatever method you want to use, you want to be consistent and you want to be reliable. So those are the things that you got to learn. And it's not that difficult. It really is not that difficult. Some things are going to be done very easily asynchronously. Some things are going to require you to be a little bit more present, have some phone calls, organize yourself, create some documents, shared documents on Google Drive or OneDrive or whatever platform you like, Notion, if you like using Notion. And once you get into the rhythm and you get the word out, you're also going to have people refer back to you, right? So maybe this telemedicine company say, hey, we also need help with this. It looks like you might be a good fit for this. And if you know how to sell yourself well, you can also say, hey, I also know you guys are doing this. Do you need some help with that? Always, always, always be respectful of their time and be respectful of your time. Meaning document every hour that you use for something, just document what you did. I usually like to go in 15-minute increments, but to be honest, if it's a project where I also have to do a lot of thinking, I will take up the entire hour and I will write it in. 15 minutes of work, 45 minutes of thinking through the project, and if they look at that and they say, that's a little bit steep, could we maybe do this? Could we do that? And I always say that too. I say, like, this is my consulting rate. If this is too much, maybe we can think of it differently. And always remember, whatever kind of consulting work you do, always put that in your portfolio, add it to your LinkedIn, add it to your profile. I think that's a great way to just improve your thing. Now, some clients may not want to be known that you're consulting for them, so do ask that up front. They will usually tell you very straight up, especially some of the healthcare startup companies. They don't want other people to know that you're consulting for them, but the majority of people are good. On my resume, I have tons of different companies that I have consulted for over the years, and they're all just listed there, pretty straightforward. So that's it, very simple. If you have any questions, leave some comments below. If you're interested in, getting into this space, ask me any questions you have. I've been doing this since 2016. I've been doing some sort of consulting in pretty much every single aspect of medicine that you can think of, except for regulatory stuff. I have no desire for that. But that's the other thing. What are you interested in? I'm interested in clinical guidelines because it makes sense to me. I'm a family medicine doctor. All I do is deal with clinical guidelines. So it's easy to write. It's easy to think through. It's easy to explain to other physicians. That's the other piece. You may now have to explain it to the CEO. You may have to now train some physicians based on this guideline that you created. And that's another, I'll say that that's another income source, but it's also a great way to just build more hours. So I hope this is helpful. Guys, enjoy this view. Look at this. There's this gorgeous breeze coming through here. It's so nice. I can't wait. Can't wait to eat that bread. And I can't wait to go check out the rock climbing gym here. Take care. Did we not stop? I guess not.